It was intended to be just another ordinary flight, a quick trip from one location to another. However, for one passenger, it became a nightmare he will never forget. As he sat calmly, the whispering began. Because of his skin hue, he received looks, criticism, and subtle but piercing glances from others who imagined they knew his tale. The tension increased when the pilot personally intervened. What started as a modest humiliation rapidly became a public spectacle. Passengers watched, some silently, some murmuring their displeasure, as this man was picked out, humiliated, and ordered off the plane. But no one knew, not the passengers, not the crew, and certainly not the pilot, that this man was no ordinary traveler. What transpired next would astound every passenger on that flight, compelling them to reconsider all they thought they understood about justice, discrimination, and power. The airport was bustling with the typical chaos, the steady buzz of conversations, the distant thrum of jet engines, and the flicker of overhead lights. Announcements rang out across the terminals, urging travelers to board their flights, while others quickly checked their clocks or went through their phones. The air smelled of coffee and expectation, the perfume of travel blending with the anxiety of innumerable strangers heading in different directions. Among the crowd, a man in his late 30s moved with calm confidence. His outfit was unremarkable: ordinary pants, a jacket, and a well-worn knapsack draped over his shoulder. He did not stick out from the crowd. To everyone staring, he was simply another tourist, a nameless face on his way to another place. He fit in seamlessly, going unnoticed by most. But while he walked, his thoughts were far from boring. His thoughts were on the travel ahead, the task that awaited him at the other end, the life he was leaving behind and returning to. He had no idea that, among the bustling crowd, there was one man keeping a watchful eye on him, a man who regarded him as more than simply another passenger, but as someone who did not belong. Standing near the gate, his clothing crisp and his posture stiff, the pilot fastened his stare on the man with a predatory intensity. The man was clueless, immersed in the rhythm of the airport, but the pilot's gaze remained unwavering. For the pilot, this was not a chance encounter. This wasn't just a passenger passing past. No, he saw this man as an intruder, someone who did not fit in and should not be there. As their paths met in the packed terminal, the pilot felt a sense of discomfort in his chest, which he couldn't quite explain. Something about this man made him feel threatened. To everyone else, the man was invisible, just a shadow in the crowd. But to the pilot, he was more than simply another face in the airport. To him, this man was a problem, an unwanted presence in a space he thought he controlled. The pilot's expression sharpened, and his thoughts narrowed to a single, uncomfortable conclusion. This man did not belong here. And in that moment, a decision was made, one that would alter everything. As the man approached the boarding gate, the pilot's gaze did not leave him. There was something disconcerting about the way his eyes traced every movement the man took, as if he was watching, analyzing, and waiting for something. His posture tensed, his hands clenched at his sides, and an unseen barrier of hate appeared to form between them. The man, oblivious to the silent inspection, walked on, his stride steady, unknowing of the storm that was quietly developing in the thoughts of the flight commander. The tension in the air was obvious, heavy with unsaid judgment. Every stride the man took felt like a mistake in the pilot's eyes, with each movement examined and dissected. The air surrounding them appeared to become heavier, packed with a sense of impending confrontation, as if the entire atmosphere was bracing for what was about to happen. Other passengers, dispersed throughout the terminal, observed the interaction. They noticed how the pilot's attention remained on the man, how his posture had changed, and the unsaid hostility that hovered in the air. But none of them said anything. They merely turned aside, their gaze shifting anxiously to various distractions. After all, why should they intervene? It was not their struggle to fight. It was not their war to win or lose. They were simply bystanders, quietly participating in the silence that enabled this injustice to occur. The man approached the gate in a calm manner that looked out of place amid the tense environment. He handed over his boarding permit with a composed expression on his face and smooth, purposeful movements. However, as he handed the ticket to the pilot, the moment changed. Instead of the expected greeting or the standard "welcome aboard," the pilot's eyes furrowed and his countenance darkened. He leaned forward, his posture tight, his stare fixed on the man's face. "Are you certain this is your flight?" the pilot inquired, his voice low but harsh, cutting through the air like a sword. His remarks lacked warmth, instead conveying distrust, doubt, and something far more frightening. The man paused, his composure unwavering, before responding, "Yes, it is." His voice was calm and unwavering, but the pilot was not convinced. His eyes searched the boarding permit, as if looking for something, anything to support his developing suspicions. "You're a security threat," the pilot shouted loudly, his words echoing across the gate area. The charge was direct, deliberate, and packed with disturbing certainty. The pilot made sure his voice carried, so everyone nearby could hear the damning statement. The tension in the terminal changed suddenly, with passengers looking uncomfortably at one another and murmurs spreading like wildfire. Gasps resonated throughout the audience. Some passengers froze, some shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, but all attention was now focused on the man. His face was calm and unreadable, as if he had anticipated this moment, but his eyes, those eyes, betrayed a quiet, boiling sorrow. There was no fury or outburst, just a deep, quiet hurt, as if the weight of the charge had hit him far deeper than anyone could comprehend. The pilot's comments hung in the air, laden with the sting of injustice. The man stood motionless, his demeanor unshakable, yet inside, a maelstrom raged. How could this happen? Why was he handled this way? He'd done nothing to deserve it. However, as the pilot's remarks echoed around the terminal, the man's heart plummeted and the subtle anguish in his eyes worsened. It wasn't only humiliation. It was the understanding that, at that time, he was perceived as a threat rather than a person, a menace because of who he was, not for what he had done. Within seconds, airport security was summoned. The man, remaining mute, was led from the plane. The whispers around him became louder and more forceful, and the passengers stared with wide eyes, some shaking their heads in amazement and others too startled to speak. The stares that followed him were like knives, harsh and cruel. But the man remained silent throughout. He did not plead his case, debate, or protest. He simply walked away, his posture straight and his head held high, as if he refused to be broken by the humiliation. Despite his outward calm, you could sense the weight of the injustice he carried. It was heavy and suffocating. The silent pain in his eyes told a story of years of misunderstanding, judgment, and discrimination. He was walking away from the jet, but the war within him was far from ended. Imagine being treated as a criminal, accused, humiliated, and dismissed, just because of who you are. Imagine being assessed based on your skin color rather than your actions, words, or character. How would you feel? Will you stand tall like this man, or will the injustice crush you? Would you fight back, or would you walk away, carrying the pain of something you did not deserve? As the man approached the terminal, he stopped. A slow and deliberate motion. He turned, his cool composure unwavering, and reached inside his jacket pocket. He drew out an ID with a single, seamless movement. However, this was not just any ID, it was an FBI badge, a symbol of authority, power, and a life they had no idea about. The room went silent. The bustling terminal, the whispers, the gasps, all came to a screeching halt. Time appeared to stretch, and the air was thick with skepticism. The dude wasn't your average passenger. He was not a random traveler who had been falsely accused. He was a federal agent operating secretly on a top-secret mission. And in that instant, the truth struck like a thunderclap, loud and irrefutable. The same passengers who had remained mute, too terrified or disinterested to speak up minutes before, now looked in complete bewilderment. Their expressions were a mix of amazement, uncertainty, and regret as they understood the significance of what had happened. The man they had seen humiliated and ignored was considerably more significant than they could have anticipated. And then there was the pilot, the man who had been so sure of his conduct that he had readily classified this man a threat. Now he stood frozen, jaw agape, dumb. The authority he had wielded so recklessly seconds before had crumbled in an instant, leaving just the weight of his mistake. The agent did not spend any time. Within hours, an official report had been filed, and the legal process had begun. The airline, which had previously believed it could sweep the incident under the rug, was now under severe investigation. Investigations into discriminatory practices were begun, and the pilot, whose conduct had triggered the entire line of events, was immediately suspended. Desperate to contain the damage, the airline hurried to publish comments. But the damage had already occurred. The news spread like wildfire, causing indignation and calls for responsibility across the country. Justice had been served quickly and decisively. The pilot was held accountable, and the airline was made to face its own mistakes. However, the thrill of discovering the truth did not remove the scars left behind. The passengers who watched the injustice, the crew who stayed silent, and the man who was falsely accused would never forget what happened that day. The episode would stay with them, a terrible reminder of how rapidly prejudice can spread and how long it can take to heal. This narrative is about more than just one man or flight. It's about something far bigger: the perils of allowing bias to influence our behavior. When we evaluate someone simply on their appearance, we not only injure them, but also show the worst of ourselves. It serves as a reminder of how quickly we can fall into the trap of making assumptions and perceiving individuals for who we believe they are, rather than who they are. And once that decision is made, it's frequently too late to reverse the damage. But this narrative also teaches a deeper lesson. It demonstrates the strength of human dignity and tenacity in the face of injustice. The man could have replied angrily, lashing out at the pilot, the passengers, and the system that had failed him. But instead, he took another path. He decided to let the truth speak for itself. His composure, grace, and refusal to be shaken by humiliation were the factors that eventually determined the outcome. It wasn't rage that produced justice. It was the quiet power of remaining steadfast in the face of adversity. And, while this experience left its mark, it also served as a reminder that no matter how severe the injustice, there is always hope. I hope that by choosing dignity over fury, resilience over retribution, we may rise above hatred and make a lasting difference. In the end, how we respond to prejudice defines us, not the prejudice itself.